We're back out here at the Big Lake once again, and today we're talking about those anglers who want to fish a Ned rig because of how effective they are, but have difficulty because they fish grassy fisheries where Ned rig doesn't do so good. I've got the answer for you. It starts with this little guy right here. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Got him. That's a better one. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and here we are. It's wintertime. It's cold, it's windy, most of the days are cloudy. That's just how it is. And as anglers, we learned to adapt. And one of the ways we learn to adapt is to downsize our presentations. You know, we make things smaller. We go from fishing huge crankbaits down to fishing small ones. We go from fishing heavier weights down to fishing lighter ones. You know, we totally change our approach because why? Those bass, they're slow, they're lethargic. That water is cold and those bass are cold. So their energy level has dropped significantly. Now, one of the best ways that we can match their energy level is with a good old Ned rig. You know, everybody loves fishing a Ned rig for the most part. Those of us who fish really grassy fisheries, like here at the Big Lake, where we've got piles of hydrilla, piles of grass, piles of milfoil, all over the place, well, fishing a Ned rig can be a real chore. Every time you cast it out and bring it back, well, you've got just a mop of gunk. And surprisingly, it doesn't really have that much to do with the hook. You can Texas rig it all you want to, and it will still happen. And the reason is because of that line tie. Most of your finesse Ned jig heads, well, they've got a 90-degree line tie. And that, along with the hook, is the problem. Now, you can Texas rig it, and you're still going to get a lot of grass. That line tie, that 90-degree line tie, that acts like a hook itself. And it snags that grass as it comes through. And for those of us who fish on grassy fisheries, those of us who have thick vegetation that we have to deal with, like those big mats of hydrilla you see back there, it's the month of December and I still have all that vegetation that I have to think about every single time I go fishing. Well, I've been thinking about Ned rigs and how to fish a Ned rig, and if there even is an effective way to fish a Ned rig in a super grassy fishery. And there's a couple of ways that I approach it. There's a rig that I came up with a while ago that you guys have seen it if you've watched the short on it, about how I can rig a Ned rig type of presentation using a small hook and a bullet weight. And this here, you know, this was my quick fix. I've just got a size 1 bait keeper hook. An Aberdeen hook will work, an O'Shaughnessy hook will work, any type of small hook will work just fine. I've got, you know, a weight stopper there, a bullet weight stopper, and I've got a little 1/8 ounce bullet weight. Now you can see here how I've got it rigged up. You know, I've got this Texas rig. And for a long time, this was my version of the Ned rig. This is how I would fish a Ned rig out on the Big Lake, on the Little Lake, on the Hatchet Lake, on so many of the fisheries that I was able to fish here in the deep South, all the way along, you know, Alabama, Georgia, into Florida, over in Louisiana. This was the presentation that I was using because the fisheries down here in the Gulf South are choked with vegetation. It's hot, it's humid, that's just how it is. And most of the lakes are very shallow. So, you know, it's nothing fancy. Small hook with a Ned bait, Texas rigged on it, you know. That was my solution and it works very well. But the problem with it is that it's not 100% a Ned rig. You know, whenever a Ned rig is being dragged along, it has a tendency for that weight to go down and it'll make that bait stick up. You know, you'll get that little tail action in the air because that's how a Ned, whenever it sits, that's how it sits naturally. Whenever it's at rest under the water, that mushroom head will face down into the dirt and that bait will kick up. So my version works great. And if you've got grass on the bottom, if you've got thick muck on the bottom, it will actually do that. But there's two things wrong with that. Number one, sometimes it'll get buried in that muck and it'll be too deep and the fish won't see it. And fish won't go after what they don't know is there. And the next thing is whenever it's on more bare bottom, if I'm dragging it, along clay bottoms or something like that, well, then it's not going to stick up as much as a regular Ned rig would. But it's what I had to work with. It's what I had to deal with. And like I said, it was a very effective presentation. And this past year, I even modded it a little bit more. And then there was times you guys saw earlier in the spring where I was taking a hitchhiker blade that had, the little tail spinner on it and screwing it in to those worms. Well, I started out just fishing it on a Texas rig. And I thought, well, what if I started using it, downsizing it, and using it on my Ned rig setup just to see how that would work? And it worked amazingly well. Those fish really seemed to like that smaller presentation. And the times that I tried it, well, I had a good bit of success with it. So it was something else that I was going to add to my repertoire. But in the wintertime, well, bass just don't seem to like as much flash, as much vibration as they do whenever it's warmer. That doesn't mean that you can't get bit on a spinnerbait or something like that under the right conditions. But, when you've got calm, slack water behind me and you don't have hardly any wind, and a lot of times when you've got sunny bluebird skies, flash is not what they want. We've talked about that before. A lot of times you just have to learn how to fish the situations. And so I ended up taking that tail spinner off of there, trying to work with that. But I noticed something whenever I was looking through the good old Bass Pro Shop catalog, right? And how many of us have spent hours and hours and hours just thumbing and leafing through that thing, oogling over every little part of it. Well, one particular part of it caught my eye whenever I was looking at the mushroom heads, the finesse jig heads by all the different companies, and they all pretty much looked the same. And I was thinking to myself, there's got to be a way. There's got to be something that I can use to fish like a Ned rig in the wintertime to try to eke out a few more bites. And when I turned the page to the Bass Pro brand, the XPS versions, well, that's when I saw this little guy right here. And this is one of the Bass Pro Shop XPS, one of their finesse heads. And you can see it's teardrop shaped, but look at that line tie. That's not a 90-degree line tie. Now you can still fish this like a Ned. You can still rig it and fish it like a Ned. And even then it will come through the muck much better. But what I did is I actually took my bait and I Texas rigged it on there to see just exactly what kind of results I would get. And this here was the end result of that. I've got a little Berkeley minnow on here. It's not the gulp, it's some kind of drop shot minnow, but it's on one of those XPS heads. And you can see I've got it Texas rigged, right? Now, what does this look like to you? What does this remind you of? To me, it looks quite a lot like a little shaky head, like a down version of a shaky head. And I thought, what if I fished it kind of like a shaky head, like a smaller shaky head? And I started to work it. I took it out here today. Today was the first day I tried it. I tried working it in some areas that I knew those bass were going to be setting up. And, well, I was getting nipped at. I was getting little bites, and I was thinking to myself, that's got to be bluegill. That's got to be crappie. But, after a few minutes, well, this is what happened. Go this way just a little bit. It's going to blow me toward the shore. That's all right. Got him. He's a little bitty guy, but I got him. Boy, he is a tiny, tiny dude, but I got him. I got him on my little Ned rig thing here. Hey, proof of concept, right? That's all that matters. Proof of concept. Boy, he's a little bitty dude, but look how pretty he is. Not even a half a pound, maybe a third of a pound. Thank you, little dude. So it was a little dink. It was a little squeaker. That's what I was feeling nipping at my bait. But it was a proof of concept. It was a success for my proof of concept that this could actually work. And what was better is I caught that little fish in a thick mat of hydrilla. This was coming through that grass as clean as a whistle, cast after cast after cast. And the best part was is that it sits on the bottom like this. This is how it's sitting on the bottom. So it's sitting on the bottom and doing like that, just like a Ned rig. Now these heads, they're not expensive at all. I think this is the 5/32 size, and then they've got the 1/8 size. I like to use the smaller one because I'm trying to go as finesse as I possibly can. Now I fished this all day, having that proof of concept, having the confidence, knowing that it would work. And well, it didn't take too long, and I started getting some really nice bites with this thing. And I thought, well, maybe I'm onto something. So I wanted to take this time. I wanted to take an opportunity and share this with you and encourage you. Give this a try. Tie this on. It's not that hard. Try a different Ned bait. You can put whatever you want to on here and try it as a normal Ned rig. And if you fish a grassy fishery like I do, if you have tons of hydrilla, milfoil, eelgrass, or whatever pondweed, if that's what you're having to fish through, I'm telling you, this came through like a champ. There was a couple of times that, I snagged a piece of hydrilla, but I found that it was mostly the floating hydrilla. As I was bringing it back, you'd have a piece of hydrilla that's floating on top of the water. I'd grab those, but coming through the thick part of the hydrilla, I didn't have any problem with it at all. I could feel the grass. I could feel it coming through the vegetation, so I knew it was there, but time and time again, it kept coming back clean. So like I said, give this a try. It's not that hard. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you right now how I hook it on there, because there's a little bit, it's a little bit different from what you would normally do with one of these baits. And that is, you start it like a normal Texas rig, you pop it out like that. But then before I get to the top, I'm immediately twisting it over. Oops, too much. I'm immediately twisting it over because of that keeper right there. And I want to go ahead and push it up over that keeper in that position. And then I just take it, push it down, and then Texas rig it, and you're good to go. It works just fine. Now I'm not pushing the point of that hook all the way through. I'm working this like I would a flipping hook, like if I'm flipping or punching, where I'm just pushing the hook in there and not taking the point all the way through. And I found that worked very well for me today. I was able to start to get some really nice bites. And while the day was still a grind, I was able to turn it at least into a success and get the skunk out of the boat. So, give this a try. Let us know what you think. So there you have it. My crazy imagination and the need to try to fish a Ned rig weedlessly in a lake full of all kinds of vegetation. It worked amazingly well for me, and I'm sure it can completely change how you fish a Ned rig in a grassy, vegetated fishery. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.